Welcome to this brand new section of the Photoshop course. This is a really exciting one. In this section, you're going to learn how to make selections and basically cut them out from the background, which is sort of the first step in creating photo composites. Remember in the last project, we talked about photo composites, and basically it's a way of combining different images into one. Well, one of the main things you're going to be doing in Photoshop is cutting out images and layering them on top of each other, removing images from the background, or like the typical, how do I remove a white background from an image? This is probably one of the top searched queries for new Photoshop users, and you're going to learn how to do it in this lesson. Luckily, there are some pretty powerful tools for doing this in Photoshop that make it super easy. And in the latest CC 2020 and newer versions, there are some even more incredible tools that kind of automatically do this for you. So go down to this tool that looks like a little paintbrush with a dotted circle. This is your magic wand tool or your object selection tool. So if you hold this down, there's different ones under there. The one you want to use right now is just the quick selection tool. And up at the top, you have these different options. One is just select subject. And if we click that, Photoshop is going to do its best to make a selection of the subject. And this photo, if you're wondering where to get this, is in your folder under Project 2 under Photos. So this is not in the PSD file. You're going to have to open this photo up in a Photoshop project or just open it up in Photoshop. So now what do we do with this selection? There's a couple sort of steps or options. One is to copy and paste this into a new layer. So if I have this selection and we have this layer selected in our layer panel and then just press Command C, Command V, we now have this new layer. And if I zoom in here, pressing Z on my keyboard, zooming in, you can see that it's not perfect. There's a lot of background that was selected. There's probably some hair that was not picked up. And that was sort of a quick attempt at making a selection. And to be honest, it does a pretty good job. And this is a difficult subject to make a selection because of her hair having so many wisps and smaller details that are difficult. There's ways that we're going to improve this though. But the other way to sort of move forward, I'm going to undo this until we're at the step where we have the selection. And if you undo too far, you can always redo by pressing Command Shift Z instead of just Command Z, or that would be Control Shift Z. And you can also find this under your edit menu. Control if you're on a PC. So now we have that selection just from clicking the select subject. Another option is by clicking our layer mask tool. So now what happens is it makes this layer into a layer mask as we've used before. And the cool thing about this is we can, as we saw before, take our brush, and remember if we want to paint on, we paint with white. So we press X on our keyboard to toggle between white and black, and we can paint on, right? So that's pretty cool because it's an editable option for you to move forward with. But still, it's the same selection. The edge isn't perfect. Now let's go to our Project 2 file, and I just want to show you another option for making a selection. So we have this floating man. This is going to be cool. We can do all kinds of stuff with this guy. If we take our quick selection tool and we use the quick selection, what we want to do is select that layer. We can adjust the size of this brush up here. We can adjust the hardness and the spacing. Basically, I tend to have my hardness down low. That allows the edges of things to be a little bit more forgiving. And same with the spacing. The spacing will also kind of select more or less. You notice that we have a couple options up here. One is sort of your standard selection. One is your plus and one is your minus. So what we're doing is adding or subtracting to our selection. So what we can do is click and drag, or just click somewhere, and you can see that Photoshop does a decent job selecting similar colors, similar exposures to make that selection. Now, it didn't select the hands, part of the hair, but we can continue kind of going in there, adding more area like so. Now, using my hand tool, it did actually a pretty good job. I'm zooming in here. It didn't select the background. But if we have our selection tool and for some reason we accidentally touch that background and now that is part of our selection, we can subtract that. Now, a keyboard shortcut that you definitely want to know is the Control Option keyboard shortcut. This is one that will allow you to adjust your brush size. So that should be Command Alt on a PC. I'm 90% sure. But on a Mac, it's Control Option. And then if you drag left or right, this is going to increase the size of the brush. And then if you drag up or down, it's going to increase the hardness or decrease the hardness. So we need our brush to be pretty small to get in there. And now we can just click in there. And sometimes once you make a selection, it takes a little bit of extra effort for it to know what to deselect, because it's like, wait a second, you selected this before. Why are you deselecting it now? So that's why this is taking a little bit more. And see, look at, we got part of the leg. So we can go back to the plus and select the pant leg. And the other thing you can do is just press the Option key when you have the plus selection on, and that's going to change to the minus selection. Same with his hair. We can try to add a little bit of hair here. We got this wisps. We don't want to get rid of any of that. Part of his neck, if you zoom in here really close, you can kind of see that part of that background was selected. You can see this is a lot of work, but you can get pretty particular with it. And then again, just like we did last time, we can click the Layer Mask button, and we have this selection. And now this selection is pretty darn good. You also may have noticed that, let's undo this to our selection, and if we have our quick selection brush up, we have Auto Enhance checked right here. And so that will actually do some automatic enhancements. In the next lesson, we're going to go into it a little bit deeper in the select and mask, and that's how we can refine this mask even more. But typically, I'll just leave Auto Enhance on. And the other thing you might note is the Sample All Layers option is unchecked. The reason for that is because, say we had this background on, which you can't see, but let's move this image over here. So we have this background selection on, and if this is checked off, Photoshop is ignoring that background. And so let's increase the size of our brush. And so if I'm hovering over and clicking over here, it's not going to really matter. It doesn't know what to select over here at all. But if we have this selected on, and maybe we want to select those little bokeh balls, these little balls of light right here, with all layers on, you can see that now it is kind of intelligently, or trying to intelligently select these balls. Now, or bokeh, I don't know why I call it balls, but it's not doing that good of a job. But I just wanted you to know that if you are having an issue with the selection, if it's like selecting something kind of funky, it might be because this Sample All Layers button is on, because it's basically looking at all layers and trying to find or choose and select what it thinks you are selecting. But really, you're just like, I want this layer, not the background layer, right? So typically, I'm just going to leave that off. So that's how you use the selection tool. That's how you remove something from the background. It's kind of the same thing if you want to just remove the background. It's just the opposite. So let me just click off of this. And one way to do this is, say you have this selection, but you're like, oh, I don't want this selected anymore. A quick way to deselect everything is just go to the rectangle marquee tool and just click somewhere. And that's a good way just to deselect. But say we want to select everything except for the subject, you can do that too. With our selection tool, I'm just clicking and dragging around my subject. Whoops, it got his head, so I'm going to select his face. And we're going to subtract, add to this background. And so to delete this, you would think, oh, let me just press the delete button. You can't delete it because it's not a smart object. So remember, if we get that error, we have to rasterize. So we're going to rasterize the layer and now delete. Now, the problem with this, again, going to my rectangle marquee tool, clicking off so we don't have the selection, is what? What is our problem? We don't have that image anymore. It's not a layer mask. We can't undo this and like paint back on the side of his face, which is now kind of ghosting in the air. We don't have that information anymore unless we just completely undo it. Undo, Control Z. But that's not what we want to do. You always want to be working in editable layers if you can with layer masks. So if you're trying to remove the background, the best way to do it is by selecting the subject itself and removing the background, unless you want to keep the background there. Now, a quick trick for that is, say we select our subject here. And I know this lesson is getting a little long, but I think this is important for you to understand. So quick selection. I haven't fixed the edges or anything, but typically what you would do is click layer mask, and now the layer mask has removed the background. But what if we want to remove our subject? What we can do is make sure we have the layer mask selected and press Command I, and that inverts the layer mask. Quick way to invert the layer mask. Now we can actually move our background images around, and that's kind of cool. We can create these little cutout or stencil cutouts. We can put our paint texture behind, and now we have this floating man silhouette kind of style. So lots of cool stuff, but I hope you are starting to get a grasp for what the selection tool allows you to do and where you would go next with it. But as always, there's more detail. There's ways to make this even better. So we're going to be going over that in the next lesson.